the studio with Jane Curtis, and Jane can always find these little known facts about things that we wonder about. And one of the things I think some of us are wondering about is, how did we get leap year, and why is it called leap year? Jane?
Good morning. Well, we'll leap right in.
Okay.
Pardon the bad pun. And talk about it. It is indeed an interesting phenomenon. It doesn't get all the publicity and the hoo-ha and so on that even Groundhog Day, I think, gets more publicity than this. But it's a very interesting thing. It's because we have calendars, and because our human superimposition of things onto the natural order that causes some of these. Now, a rough comparison to begin with, you know how in music, if you tune a true octave, you cannot divide it up into equal parts and have them be usable.
Right.
So this is somewhat similar, because the order of celestial things, I mean, why we have a year and so on, is superimposed upon the human activity of organizing that into months and days and so on.
And
so
that happened thousands and thousands of years ago.
Well, it began to happen. The good old Egyptians were the first known to do that. And they noticed that their holidays were falling, or their holy days as well as their festival, were falling at the wrong time of year. And they tried to figure out why. They determined the beginning of their year, which was in the midsummer, by looking at when the star, Sirius the dog star, first appeared on the horizon again. You know, it appears to us because of our orbit that stars disappear behind the sun for a while. But when Sirius came back, that was the beginning of their year. And then they, of course, regulated everything. And originally, the year was exactly 360 days. And that made it very easy. And 12 was sort of magic number anyway in antiquity.
Right.
But they set up their year with these 12 months, 30 days equal, and they divided the year into 3 seasons, going along with the phases of the Nile, when it was flooding, inundating, fertilizing the soil, and then the planting and growing, and then the harvesting. So they had this all going. Well, they began to notice that something was a little bit askew. And of course they couldn't tell it, but something, a little readjustment in the solar system, and the year had become 365.25 something days. So when they noticed that, what did they do about it? Well, they didn't try to divide it up in any other way, like ours is all different length months, but they simply added 5 days at the end and said these are special days, festival days.
So they added 5 festival days.
So
well,
they
what
just
a good
added,
excuse to have a party.
Yeah. Well, these are known as intercalary days. And that went on, of course, probably have to go at least a couple hundred years before they realized that there was still, something wasn't quite right. And they actually got onto that 0.25%, that 0.24 something. And we have, in fact, a document in hieroglyphics. I may show you a page of that later.
Really?
That has the order from the Pharaoh that you will add 1 day to these 5 days. Every 4 years you would do that. And of course nowadays we know that it's not just any 4 years really. In our calendar, it's the ones that are divisible by 4. And the computer world, some of the programmers weren't quite tuned into that. I think it was that, what was that famous, that game one, a couple of years ago, the game stations went all askew because somebody had considered that 1910 was a leap year and acted accordingly. It wasn't, of course.
Right.
And other similar things were occurring there. But when you look back in history, you see the Egyptians having discovered these things, and by the time Julius Caesar came along, went down there, of course, the Alexandria Library was famous, and Egypt has already done some pretty interesting scientific feats, but Caesar went down there, And he took a look at that, and he said, gee, that's a good idea. That had just happened in the middle, well, in about 290s BC, that they had discovered that, and they had made this change. It was the third of the Ptolemies who was in the chair then. He was interested in science. So Caesar said, well, this looks like a great idea. So when he went back to Rome, he had evolved his calendar, which 45, 46 BC, I think, was the first finding of it. But he had gone back and adjusted it for that. So it goes clear back to that. Now, it was not until Pope Gregory, one of the Gregories, in 1582, that they evolved, and from that, eventually from the Egyptians, down to the calendar that we use now.
To where those days are added throughout the year instead of all at the end.
Well, we have the one day adds it, but we do it every 4 years, and it has to be every 4 years that are evenly divisible by 4. Or by 400 if it's like 1900 was not,
right,
for example.
Right.
So all of this as background, I think, is really quite interesting. Other countries, other civilizations, including some old ones, have had different calendars, and it all hangs from the calendar, how you arrange it. The Jewish and the Chinese and some of the others have 13 months because they are lunar calendars. But they're not exact either. They don't fit nicely within 365 and a quarter.
Right.
It was the Romans, of course, who changed around their names, October, November, December. It was when they were starting their year in March the 1st, which they did. And of course, oct comes from 8. And December 12. Well, that always looks funny now, but that's what it came from. And then they added a month to honor Caesar, which was July. And so they had to do another one, honor Augustus.
Oh,
and
of course.
Became August. And they stopped adding, I guess, at that point, or something happened. But it explains why we have that calendar. In some of these calendars, the Mayans, for example, had one, and they had a triple system going. They had, solar signs, lunar signs, and I've forgotten what the third one was. Maybe a second one of those. But what they had to do was have them all three going at the same time, and that meant that the only time they would coincide, you see, would be this multiple of these three different things. Now, it was enough if you just had 2 going, but if you had 3 going, these were very, very important years. And you may remember some years ago they were predicting the world would end.
Yes.
In December, what was it, 2012, I think?
Not too long ago.
It was back a few years anyway. That was the reason why they were predicting that. Because
by
of
the
this,
Mayan calendar.
yeah,
Right, I remember that.
And mine, some of the related stuff. They were predicting that and saying the world is going to end because this is such a vitally important thing. Well, of course, the old Egyptian stuff had some of this type thing too, where you had certain years that wrapped it all up. But this is the background of where we got that. And I would like to take a look at, let's look at pictures 1 and 2 to begin with. These were in the modern times here. Picture 1 is just a kind of reminder and what they sometimes make a little special thing about it. Picture 2 shows us a jolly thing that comes up there, and the association with frog, of course, depends on really our conception of it because of the leaping. Others don't quite have that. And why they say leap in English, I'm not sure, because you're not leaping over anything. You are adding something. You're fitting something.
You're leaping ahead.
But you're leaping ahead, just exactly is
Right.
what you're doing. Yes. You're not getting confounded by it, and you're holding the year, as
Right,
it were.
right.
And you're holding it so it's not going to slip, it's going to stay. The seasons will fall in the proper months, and all. Christmas will come in, that kind of thing. Rabbits, of course, were co-opted by Easter, I think. You don't see rabbits so much, although they're prime leapers, and hoppers going on from there. We didn't have another picture there, I don't think. The foreign words for what we call leap year are interesting. I just took two most common ones. The French calls it bis sextile, and this means twice 6, and this goes way back to something I won't even begin to describe. I read through it, but in some of these reckonings, they take 6 days before the beginning of the year. And it goes back to the Romans again.
Right.
The Romans, 6 days before the 1st of March. So that's the 24th of February. And you were going to insert the necessary time in there.
Okay.
So that's where they get theirs. Sometimes it's referred to in English. I think they pronounce it usually so bisextile or something like that. But it's this 6-day thing, and they count both ends when they count 6. So that's why you come up with the number we use. The German has quite a logical one. They call it the Schaltjahr. Schalten means to shift or arrange. When you shift your gears in a car, that's Schalten, for example. And that's quite logical because
Yes.
you're
You are
rearranging
having to shift.
so that
right.
they'll stay, within your
Right.
definitions. The Chinese one that I mentioned now, that's pretty interesting. That goes back way BC as well. And when you go into a Chinese restaurant, usually you will have a placemat that has the 12
Right.
zodiac signs around. Well, the Chinese have this double system, and one is the celestial goings on, and the other is of course the human goings on. And they coincide. What I think is it 60? 60 is the one, and then the real here's the other real month.
Okay.
So, but theirs is a lunar system too. So what they do is again have their 13 months in the year, but where they do all this, they slide it in before the end, and in the Jewish calendar you do it too. So when they slide this day, and it increases the length of the year, and some of their years have 380 some days, and it varies a little bit.
Okay.
So we begin to like our system a lot better because it keeps the year
A
at
little
the
more
same-
steady.
a little more stable. Yeah, it holds it. I'm surprised we didn't call it the whole year. or
Little
something.
leap month.
Yeah, but leap month and leap day and leap year, we see them all
Right,
going on. But but that developed so long ago, and they didn't have any superstitions apparently about it. Superstitions existed in many places, and I understand they still exist in Greece,
Really?
where people who want to be married on the 29th of February will put it off, or even the whole year will put it off, which, is quite interesting.
Yeah.
And just bad luck in general, various, I can't name you all the countries that do or did, but they take account of it.
Huh.
And there was a suspicion in some of the northern lands that there was something very, very special about that day, and it didn't count. So they had to make laws that indicated that anything that really was on that day, you had to say on the 28th or on the 1st of
Or on the
March.
1st.
It wouldn't count.
I know
So-
we have at least one person living here at Green Spring whose birthday is on the 29th.
Oh, how nice. We should have gotten a hold of that person.
Yes, we should have.
It would have been interesting. But there was another, remember Sadie Hawkins' Day
Yes.
in Little Abner? Well, that was the
Yes.
29th. And supposedly then the ladies could go out and do the proposing. They
Right.
were allowed one
Everything
day
was
in 4
upset that
years.
day.
Yeah. But that ladies didn't like that too much because it just sort of rubbed it in, the fact that it was not socially acceptable.
Right.
And you just had to sit there like a bump on a log, The men all got to take their choice. Well, can we go back, please? This will get us into a couple of the cartoons. Let's go back to, I think it's 3 that I want first. Yes, 3, please. That one I think is a rather cute cartoon. It's a lady with a butterfly net, and here's this little man sitting there with his red socks reading paper. And in the foreground is an older lady, and she's, sort of saying, "Right on." She said, "There's a good specimen over there." So this kind of thing was, And it's a 1908, as it says there. I guess when these quaint little things are still.
I had forgotten about Sadie Hawkins Day, but that was a big thing when I was growing up.
Yes, it was. Remember Daisy May would be out there running after her.
Right.
Little Abner would always get away, as though he weren't the one who really pursuing her.
Yeah.
But now the next picture, picture number 4, we can see this is a cartoon. The few that I found were really pretty unfunny,
still
just
a
in general,
juvenile.
not clever.
Right.
But that one's obvious, but you know, not bad. Takes note of the day. And the next one will show us. I think this is a rather good one. It's a birthday card for leap year. I hope 25% of your wishes come true this leap year. So you have to spread them all over 4 years. So they tried to incorporate it into some of the traditional things, but other than the sometimes bad luck, once in a while it meant good luck. The legal questions of it were even called into account sometimes.
I can imagine.
And there were laws in certain places. Anything occurring on this date will be listed as though it had occurred, and some places said the 28th, and some the next one.
Sort of reminds me of some of the old blue laws we had that at one time checks could not be dated on Sundays.
Mm-hmm.
And so I could see where they would say, well, checks that are dated the 29th are no good. Yeah.
They made it a non-day.
Right.
But it's simply, now, the effect is also increased somewhat, I guess, or works with it. You know, when we go around the sun in our orbit, if you take a drawing of that and put a little X where we are right now, and then come back a year later, and we're going to be one beyond that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it always will be going forward that way. Yeah. Just simply because we're moving around in our orbit at the same time this other stuff is going on. You've heard of Gilbert and Sullivan.
Yes.
And I wonder how far back you have to go in age, because I've mentioned it once or twice to younger people, and it just, who's that? You know?
Who's Gilbert and Sullivan?
What are they?
Oh, once in a while they bring them up and they do a high school musical, one of the Gilbert and Sullivans. Yeah.
They're copyright free, aren't they?
Yes, I think so.
Well, the Gilbert and Sullivan wrote that one that had to do with this very thing. The hinge of the plot was the fact that the protagonist, I won't call him a hero, he wasn't exactly, the protagonist was born on the 29th. But it's poor Frederick. And Frederick, by mistake, is taken and apprenticed to a pirate.
Right.
Instead of a pilot. His family had wanted him to be apprenticed and learn to be a mariner, you know, a seaman. So he gets into trouble then because he falls in love with a daughter of a comic major general. These things were all very funny, and they were all, they made fun of the government and so on, and got away with it because they were so funny. Queen Victoria, I guess, was amused by them. They were in that era. But the operetta, anyway, the Pirates of Penzance. Poor Frederick falls in love with Mabel, and he wants to leave the pirate band. He's not happy. He's not a happy pirate, but they, of course, can't let him go. So they say, no, sorry, you know, it's just, you can't. So there's some tender farewell songs. And I have here a couple minutes from that operetta. And when you're forewarned, I think you can follow what they're saying. That they speak very clearly. It's speaking some of the time even, but they're explaining to him, you see, that why he can't do this. Okay. So please, could we have this clip from Gilbert and Sullivan?
A paradox, a most ingenious paradox. This paradox.
Ooh, I love a good paradox.
Paradox. For some ridiculous reason, to which, however, I've no desire to be disloyal, some person in authority. Who? I don't know who. Very likely the Astronomer Royal has decided that, although for such a beastly month as February, 28 days as a rule are plenty, 1 year in every 4, his days shall be reckoned as 9 and 20. Through some singular coincidence, I shouldn't be surprised if it were owing to the agency of an ill-natured fairy. You are the victim of this clumsy arrangement, having been born in leap year on the 29th of February. And so, by a simple arithmetical process, you will easily discover that though you've lived 21 years, yet if we go by birthdays, you're only 5 and a little bit over.
Dear me, let's see. Yes, yes, with yours my figures do agree. 5 and a quarter, oh, that's rich. How quaint the ways of paradox, at common sense she gaily mocks. Though counting in the usual way, yes, 21 I've been alive. Yet reckoning by my natal day, yet reckoning by my natal day, 1, 2, 3, 4. I am a little boy of 5.
He's a little boy of 5.
A paradox, a most ingenious.
So they made good use of the paradox.
Yes, they did.
There for this young man. I don't know of any other things that make use of. You think there might be a popular song or something, but if there is, I haven't found it.
I don't know.
They just don't, do a lot with it.
I'm kind of surprised that it hadn't been more commercially made of it.
Yeah.
We have all these sales about different things, but
Of course, George Washington Day takes a little wind out of their sails.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, well, now we have another. Let's see, our next picture must be numbered 6, I guess, please.
Oh, this is the hieroglyphic one.
This is the hieroglyphic one. Yes.
Now,
and-
what's it telling us?
Well, you see at the top there it says a decree of Canopus. Canopus was a city on one of the branches of the Nile Delta there, and they had some big meeting, like some of the conferences in medieval Europe, these big things where they decide all kinds of things, religious, and mainly religious ones, and of course we have them now. We have political ones going on all over the place
Right.
now. But yes, this is the very, very section of what was promulgated by the Pharaoh and the top priests. And if you will look in line 2 there, you will see the third word is sort of a thing like a reed and like a little chickie there, little bird. And then the very next thing begins a sentence, and that sentence says, it will be celebration in the temples, and it goes on then from there, and it says, what is that? And you will add one day every 4 years, because they already knew to have these 5 days, and they go into all that. We've already got that. And the things you see there they have lines around them. Those are the cartouches. That is the Pharaoh and the Queen. The Queen is in on all these things, and after him, you see what looks like 2 little flags with something in between. Well, those were the thing that came after them, like the great or the whatever. In this case, it was the thing before that has the honeybee on it means king of Upper and Lower Egypt. But yeah, if you see now, the thing in the middle there with the wavy line on top after the owl, that's one of the words for Egypt, Tamert. But you know that this is a legitimate document because above there now where it begins with the little bird after the reed, and then there's a thing kind of like a TP and an R under it, and then Aritu. That Aritu is be or make, and then the squarish thing is a festival. And in the temples, this banner is a religious thing. It's also used in words for Pharaoh, all kinds of religious temple things. And since it's a special occasion, the word for in is that's a crown. They use that word for in instead of one of the other ones. So as you go through it, then you find out. Now down below there, below the crown, that one is the queen, Berenike. And those things all have a phonetic value. Go down a little bit, and you'll get back onto that. There down to the cartouche, and move a little bit. And that the thing before it, that crook is a symbol of power. And afterward is a woman. But now then, going on to the left there, you're going to come to the word for, or the ending of the word for Pharaoh. That's part of it. But he's telling him right there, you will proclaim this day. And it really was the Pharaoh in this case, because he really was interested in that kind of thing, and it was his idea. We'll clean this up now. So they did. But this is the very sort of thing. This one was not on anything like the Rosetta Stone, but in fact, this is somewhat before. Well, before it was found, certainly. But this is one of the Macedonian Greek pharaohs, the third Ptolemy. And it shows you again the origin of realizing that was happening, which took them a few hundred years, but they got it. Mm-hmm. And then doing something about it, taking action. And the Pharaoh, of course, didn't have to go to a divided Congress to get anything accomplished. His word was law. And the priests presumably agreed with him as far as doing it, although interestingly enough, they stuck to the old system. And I think the Coptic church, although a Christian church, in Egypt does retain some of that. Mm-hmm. So that's the origin of our celebrating link beer, figuring that out. Of course, the actual happenings are the origin of it, but figuring it out.
Figuring it out.
It means nothing to us unless we can do that.
Right.
Now we have another picture that shows the Chinese, sort of the Chinese version. This is just taken from the document, which is very long and very involved. They dot every I and cross every T. But these are the very things you'll see if you go into a Chinese restaurant most of the time.
Right, look out the...
And what they're used for, now this system is 12, and the system of astronomical heavenly things is, I think that's the one that's 60 items. So when you're giving a year, when you're denoting a year, you use one of those and one of these. Mm-hmm. And of course, after these 12 are used up, you've only used up 12 of your 60. So the 60 go on, but the 12 starts over.
Okay.
And it becomes a very involved calculation in how they do that.
But the Chinese and the Egyptian both are well known for having high-level mathematical formulas.
They are. They figured it out, and they figured it out correctly.
Way back, right.
And the system we have now, the Gregorian calendar, I think it would lose. I think it would take it 3,000 years to 3,200 years or something to come back to the starting point.
Oh, okay.
And doing it so, and in the meantime, we would have lost a few seconds. Uh-huh. But I mean, of course, the nature thing goes on, because every time we come full circle on our orbit, mm-hmm. we're losing one, as it were.
Right.
Having to go on to the next, because our system is like that, because it allows us to do that.
Okay, we're down to the last minute.
Well, let's see. What should we leave? Well, this is an example of how science is still important. People don't think about it too much because everything goes so automatically. Mm-hmm. You don't think about what's going on inside your car when you drive.
I know once in a while there'll be something about the Greenwich time having to be readjusted
mm-hmm.
a little
mm-hmm.
by 1 second or something
Yeah.
like that. You'll read about that.
I guess it's the Naval Observatory here that does that. I suppose they coordinate. I think there's something in Singapore that does too. But all over the world, in all these civilizations, no matter how they reckon it, the same thing, of course, is happening to everybody, and the different ways they cope with it are fascinating. And I think ours, you know, for the ordinary citizen like you and me, it's painless.
Yeah, we just sort of accept it as happening.
Yeah,
Right?
it's just part of the thing.
But I think it's interesting how we live by the calendar now rather than by seasons or
yes.
this
We
sort of
do.
thing. So,
And of course, it was the Romans again that why our months are all different days. Romans are responsible for that because they had to balance off somehow.
spread it out over
Most
the
of
year.
these other systems adjust. It's interesting. They adjust in some way so that their leap day or leap month, whichever they have, comes around the end of February, because the world is so connected now. You know that even
right.
though everybody
you have to
doesn't
have
say,
summer in the summer and
you
winter
have
in
to
the
have,
winter.
yeah,
Right.
and for making
February's
business,
kind
yeah.
of in between.
Yeah. And you know the Chinese New Year's in spring.
Right.
We always February, right,
Right.
around now. So
Okay, this has been fascinating to me, and I hope you've enjoyed learning a little bit about the history of New Year, of the leap year. And if you can, when you watch the scroll, you see the woman who has a leap day birthday. Wish her happy birthday, because I've forgotten what age she really is, but it's kind of a special day for her. Let's see what kind of announcements we have.